I'm Julie Mason. It's great to welcome Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg back to the program. You can find him on Twitter at Secretary Pete. Hi, Mr. Secretary.
Hello, good to be with you.
You're coming off a tough couple of weeks. How are you doing?
Well, look, there's always something going on in the transportation system that requires attention. We've had a lot of focus right now on aviation safety and railroad safety, key part of our job, and we're pursuing that while doing all the grant making that we've been doing at the same time. It's the nature of the job, and we're full steam ahead here.
So Senate Commerce is having a hearing, Senators Brown and Vance testifying about their bipartisan bill, and this responds to recent train derailments, I believe.
Yeah, and I really welcome the work that they're doing. It's bipartisan. It addresses many of the things that the department has been calling for and that I have been calling for that would improve railroad safety. And it's a moment where I think the country is beginning to realize just how important it is to raise the standard. There's a very powerful freight railroad lobby that has successfully delayed or watered down a lot of rules that we've needed. But right now, especially because so many people saw what happened in East Palestine and said, is my community safe? It's a chance to do more than ever. And I'm very glad to see that Senators Brown and Vance and others have stepped up to work on this, and eager to work with them on implementing this kind of legislation if it can get through.
You went to East Palestine to the scene of that derailment, and it was a CNN reporter who pointed out on this show that you got so much grief for not going, but then it turns out you were the only Secretary of Transportation who'd been to a train derailment.
Yeah, it's unusual for transportation secretaries to go to crash sites or derailment sites because the role of the NTSB, which is the National Transportation Safety Board, really is in the lead when it comes to disaster response. But I thought in this particular case, what the people of East Palestine needed was not that kind of bureaucratic focus on which department does what. What they really needed was to hear from the administration, especially because there had been a lot of misinformation directed their way, I think by some folks looking to take political advantage. And when I got there, my first question, of course, for everybody from the mayor to the council members I met and others is there anything that you need from our department that you're not getting? And they assured me that there wasn't. We had people on the ground from the very beginning supporting the investigators. But what they do need is some reassurance that they're going to be able to have their lives back and that they're not going to be forgotten when the political circus left town. And so I've continued to work to stay in touch with them. We need to support the community directly, which is really an area that EPA has been doing great work on. But also more generally, we need to honor them by making sure that these kinds of disasters, which happen way more often than people realize in this country, that they are less likely to happen in the future.
It seems to me that your service as mayor would make you particularly sensitive to those kinds of community needs.
Absolutely, and I had a good conversation with the mayor while I was there, and he had this thrust upon him, and that's something that no community would ask for. Also met with local leaders who were just trying to restore the normalcy that people need and get them the good information about the safety of their air, water, and soil.
DOT also unveiling some new grants, about $90 million worth of grants from the infrastructure law for 59 some odd projects that use technology for innovative transportation projects. What does that look like?
Yeah, this is about making sure that the new technologies and innovations that we're seeing in transportation actually benefit us with a better, safer, cleaner, a more efficient transportation system. So we're supporting 59 projects around the country, and they're very different projects, but they all have in common is they're about taking some of this new technology and making sure it makes that kind of difference. We've got projects that are going to help improve safety around work zones. You're going to be seeing a lot of work zones, especially now as we head into construction season. Very dangerous for workers and sometimes for drivers. And so we're working on ways to make sure that you're more likely to get a good alert from a navigation system like a GPS when you go into a work zone, and other technologies that can be helpful. So it's everything from that very literally on-the-ground technology to support for the use of uncrewed aircraft systems or drones to help deliver medical packages in remote and rural areas that are hard to serve with surface transportation. It's not about technology for its own sake. I mean, we can all geek out on some of these interesting and exciting technologies. It's about putting them to work in ways that are actually going to make us better off.
Mr. Secretary, The news out of the airline industry is just consistently bad. Is flying getting worse?
Well, we've seen improvements in some areas, concerns in others. Well, let me tell you about what's definitely gotten better. We have a new level of accountability for airlines compared to just a year ago. We pressed them and got enforceable commitments on things like whether they will take care of you with hotels or rebooking or ground transportation or meals if you get stuck and it's their fault. We didn't used to have that at this level. We got those commitments over last summer, and that has been very useful in dealing with things like, for example, the Southwest meltdown where so many passengers were stranded. Because we got those commitments over the summer, we are now able to enforce Southwest's responsibility to take care of those customers. So that's what's gotten better. But here's what's a major concern right now. As the system comes back, and it's come back at a faster pace than even the most optimistic scenarios during the worst days of COVID predicted, the system is struggling to keep up. And one thing that's of particular concern to me is we've seen a number of close calls, or what are called runway incursion incidents. This is when either a controller or a pilot has to intervene to prevent aircraft from coming too close to each other. Now, this is something that happens on average in the past decade or so. It's happened roughly about once a month, but we're on track to see it almost double that rate. And that's got me very concerned, because even one of those is something that should be avoided. And we want to make sure we're acting and taking steps around that before something worse happens. So we convened a safety summit at the FAA. Now we're working on steps both that the industry needs to take and that we're looking at within the air traffic control system to call everybody to pay very close attention to this, as we see this just incredible amount of demand and pressure on the system. We welcome the demand. I mean, it's a good thing economically that people want to fly again, and they are. But we've got to make sure that the system is keeping up in terms of customer service. That's the airline's job, which we will be a watchdog on, and in terms of safety, which is all of our jobs.
At the consumer level, you've also criticized some of the airlines for their, I would say, ridiculous fees, including, charging extra for your kid to sit next to you on a plane.
Yeah, to me, this is basic. If you're traveling with your kids, you ought to be able to sit next to them. I think that's common sense. But, too often you have a situation where you're told you got to pay an extra fee for that, or you wind up having to plead your case with a gate agent, or how many of us have been in that situation where you have to haggle with fellow passengers and hope that they'll take pity on you and let you switch seats. We're trying to make sure that we take care of that at the front, or I should say we require airlines to take care of that at the front end. Just don't do it. And many of them have said that they try to avoid that. We're saying, good, put it in writing, and we're going to hold you accountable for that. We've put up an airline customer service dashboard. You can use it to see which airlines already have this policy. 3 of the Big 10 so far have agreed in writing to do this in a way that we can enforce. I'm working on the other 7, and we're simultaneously working on rules to make this a requirement. But I don't want to wait on the entire legal process to play out for us to have this rule on the books. They should be doing it anyway, and I'm glad that so far Alaska Airlines, Frontier Airlines, and American Airlines have made that commitment. I think United is close. We're trying to get them over the finish line. And again, I'd like to see 10 out of 10 top 10 airlines do that before we even get this rule done.
Maybe some parents don't want to sit with their kids.
I hadn't thought about that. Maybe you can pay extra to not have to. Someone you don't want to, but we're going to leave that up to parents and make sure you're not in that position involuntarily.
Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Find him on Twitter @Secretary Pete. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good talking.
Take care.